Hello everyone, this is Charlie. In today's tutorial, I will be showing you how to create a loop for a series of numbers for X amount of time. As I have mentioned in the last video, that I always use the index match function to help me transform the data from an aggregate format to a transactional format. The index match function helps us to look for the number within the table. However, that's assuming we have all the identifiers that are ready for us to do the lookup. If there is no such list, we then need to create it. Please ask if you have any question and let's dive into it. Using the table from the last tutorial as an example. In order to create a comprehensive list, we first need to understand what we are working on. Since there are 6 investors, we will need 6 rows for each transaction type to create a comprehensive list. So for the investment amount, let me copy the investor ID to column A on the other worksheet and have the transaction type on column B 6 times. Likewise, for the management fee, we'll do the same thing. And the same thing for the operating expenses. So now we have a comprehensive list for all the investor ID and the transaction type. After I use the index match function, then you will see the total from the new worksheet agree to the total from the table. And we successfully transform the data from an aggregate format to a transactional format. Well, it is a relatively small data, so we can do it this way. However, we cannot use the same approach for large data because it is very manual and is extremely inefficient. And for that reason, we'll need to create a looping process to handle this situation more efficiently. Unfortunately, Excel does not have a simple function you can use for this scenario. But don't worry, you don't need to use fancy functions for this scenario. As long as you know how to think like an Excel spreadsheet, then you can achieve a lot with just a couple of formulas. For the current situation, we are going to use 2 functions, the if functions and the rows functions. For now, let's focus on creating a loop for the investor ID. Let me start a new worksheet here. Copy and paste the investor ID in column B. I'm going to assign each investor ID a number in column A. So instead of working with the actual investor ID, we can just work on a series of numbers instead. And now we know that there are 6 investors, so the loop that we are creating should be from 1 to 6. There are 3 transaction types in total, which is the investment, management fee, and operating expenses. So we need to create a loop for 3 times. For the total rows we need, we'll multiply 6 by 3, the result of which is 18, and that means we need only 18 rows in order to create a comprehensive list. We're going to break down the whole process into 3 steps so it is easier to understand what's going on. We'll create a loop in column G that starts with 1, ends with 6, and starts with 1 again and ends with 6 again, continue indefinitely. To start, in cell G3, we'll begin with 1, and in cell G4, we'll use equal, select the above cell, plus 1, and copy the cell to the below cells. See cell G9, it is number 7. But we don't want it to be 7 as the loop that we are creating should not pass 6. So we can use the if function. If the above cell is equal to 6 or cell E4, then the formula should return us the number 1, or else it will be the formula that we have set up, which is the above cell plus 1. Copy the cell to the range. Now we have a column loop from 1 to 6 indefinitely. However, we want it to stop at the 18th rows. Whatever that's over 18 rows, we don't want it. So we need to put a stop, and we will do it in column H with the rows function. Rows function is not a popular function to use, but it is extremely useful in this occasion. A rows function will return us how many rows are there within the reference range, and it can include the current cell. Let's look at cell H3, in which I'm going to use the rows function, select the current cell H3. The formula will return us the number 1. It's because there is only 1 row within the reference range. In cell H7, if I use rows again and select H3 to H7, the formula will return us the number 5 as there are 5 rows in the range. So it seems very helpful in our current situation. Now, let's lock the cell H3 to make it the beginning of the range, and copy the cell to the rest of the column. As you can see the result, the columns starts from 1 and go indefinitely. And let's look at cell H21, the result of which is 19, and we know that the total rows we need is 18 as shown in cell E6. Therefore, we can use if function again. If the result from the current cell is larger than cell E6, we want it to return us 0. Or else, the cell will continue to use the current formula. And done, we successfully create a column that will stop at 18. And now, we can use column I to consolidate the function in column G and column H. In cell I21, if the cell in column H is equal to 0, we can simply have the cell return us 0. Or else it should return us the result from column G. Copy the cell to the rest of the column. And you will see the column starts with 1 and ends with 6. Start with 1 again and end with 6 again, and start with 1 again and end with 6 again 3 times. This is exactly what we are looking for. For presentation purpose, we can further list the function in column I so we can remove column G and column H, just like how we did for the index match function in the last tutorial. In cell I3, is referencing cell H3 and cell G3. We can substitute it with the actual formula that we set up in both cells instead. As you may have noticed, when we create the formula in column G and column H, the formula is actually referenced to its own column. With that said, we can also move the reference cell or range from column G and column H to column I. Copy the cell to the rest of the column. At the end of the day, we'll be able to create a loop by using column I, and we can delete column G and column H. Lastly, in the VLOOKUP column, we can use VLOOKUP to look up the investor ID based on the loop we create in column G. And now we successfully create a loop for the investor ID 3 times. That's it for today's tutorial. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to create another loop using the loop that we just created. And together with these 2 videos, you will be able to completely transform the data from an aggregate format to a transactional format. Comment below if you have any question, like my video now, and subscribe my channel for more tutorials. Lastly, don't forget to check out all of the balance and download the free accounting system module.